Hi. Um, Hi everyone, welcome. So I'm just letting everyone in. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hi Ashley, it's good to see you. Welcome everyone. Okay, well, I am going to jump in because I'm so excited to capitalize on the time we have today for just talking and letting people in. For those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Jessica Shore. I'm the founder and owner of Encompass. And at Encompass, we provide executive functioning support to adolescents, parents, young adults, and adults who struggle due to challenges related to ADHD, ASD, anxiety and mental health challenges, and learning differences. It's for that reason we are beyond excited to welcome Kazrin Kapp of Body Mind Alliance today. So, Kazrin is a licensed therapist specialized in helping exhausted adults break the cycle of sleepless nights using compassionate and effective research-based approaches. Kazrin has extensive training in the gold standard treatment for insomnia, CBTI, as well as other emerging evidence-based approaches such as ACTI, ERRT, and others with training from the University of Pennsylvania, University of Arizona, and the Society of Behavioral Sleep Medicine. Kazrin has over a decade of experience helping clients find personal and professional success. So everyone, please warmly welcome Kazrin.
I'm so excited to be here and collaborate with Encompass. It's been a joy to work with Jessica and Della on this collaboration project. And so I'm going to jump right in and screen share. We're going to bust some sleep myths today. There'll be lots of time for questions. So feel free to write those down if you have any, or if you think of something as we're talking. And if anybody needs anything, you can put it in the chat as well, and I'll check that from time to time. And so if you can mute yourself, sometimes the background noise can be a little bit popping up, but if you do need to talk, you can feel free to unmute yourself. We're going to wrap up in about 60 minutes at 2 o'clock Eastern, depending on where you are. That's going to be a different time. So like Jessica wonderfully introduced me, I'm Kazrin. I love helping people sleep well, something I'm really passionate about. And also, there's so much stigma around sleep, especially in neurodivergent communities. We're going to talk about some of the myths that come up specifically around night owl schedules, around neurodivergence as it relates to sleep, and then some of the myths and stigma in general. So thank you for attending today and helping me in breaking that myth and also helping promote accurate information about sleep. So this is not a clinical treatment. This is not treatment of insomnia or another sleep disorder. I am a licensed therapist. I do treat that, but I don't know anything about your medical history or your background. So this is not medical advice. This is education and information, and I'll have resources at the end about where to find a qualified provider if you do think you need some more support. So kind of a disclaimer there. So let's dive in right here with the myths. I wanted to start here just because of the community that Jessica and Della and Encompass have built around neurodivergence. And this is something I hear a lot. It's better to get up early and or it's bad to stay up late. So you'll hear this in phrases like early to bed, early to rise, makes one healthy, wealthy, and wise, or the early bird gets the worm. But the reality is that everyone is unique. And in the field of behavioral sleep medicine, I mean, there's researchers and scientists who have found that going to bed late is perfectly fine for your health. It's not morally inferior. And in fact, we need everyone on a different schedule as a community because we have things like night shifts, overnight emergency room nurses and doctors that need to be working in the middle of the night and really performing at their peak. If you're a night owl, that's the time when you feel most energized and feel good. So there's just so much shame around being a night owl, but it's really important part of human diversity. And just a note too, there's really successful, healthy, wise people with late schedules and all types of schedules. Another myth is that sleepless nights are due to a lack of discipline. And you might hear this like, either I need to try harder to sleep well, or someone might tell you, you need to try harder to sleep well. So while that might seem true, trying to sleep can really backfire. So sleep is sort of like digesting. If you're saying to yourself, I need to digest right now, what's going to happen? You're going to get stressed out. Your digestion isn't really going to change. So it's an involuntary process. Our bodies take care of that for us. And by creating stress and tension of trying to sleep, increases the stress in the body, which makes sleep less likely. Our body's then trying to protect us from a threat, from a perceived stressor. So it's going to be even harder to sleep. Now, at the end, we'll talk about, because in the pitch for this, I talked about what actually works to help sleep. That's not to say that we're totally powerless. There are things we can do to sleep well, but like white knuckling and trying to do it is what a lot of intelligent, driven, motivated people do. It just absolutely backfires. So we'll talk more about what actually works at the end. Another myth and thing I commonly hear is it's a bad sign to wake up briefly in the night. Especially, there are some people who do fall asleep as soon as their head hits the pillow and they stay asleep all night. That's pretty rare, but it does happen. And if we compare ourselves to that, it's not really a fair comparison. Anything less than half an hour awake in the night is considered perfectly healthy. So you could think about it again from sort of a survival perspective. If we are conked out all night and there's some kind of house fire or something needs our attention, we don't attend to it. That's not great. So we're kind of built to have lighter stages of sleep, brief awakenings, and that's considered really healthy. Making sure that the kids are okay and nothing's on fire, and then go back to sleep. Now, if you're lying awake for hours and hours and hours, that's something that we can address with insomnia therapy, CBTI, ACTI, all of those alphabet treatments that we can use to help you sleep well. But brief awakenings are perfectly okay. Another myth that's really common, although I do see people aware more and more that this is a myth, everyone should get 8 hours of sleep. So when we're talking about population recommendations, so this is something people say to everybody. So this goes along with 8 glasses of water a day. It's not accounting for anything, whether you drink soup for most of your meals and maybe you're getting plenty of hydration and you're trying to chug down more water. It doesn't account for the individual person. And trying to get 8 hours can put people in a position where they're doing the myth from earlier, where they're trying to sleep. And that can make it even harder to get good rest. So the reality is that our sleep needs vary from person to person, and it changes over the lifespan. I have a graph here. It's a little bit small, so I made it a bigger here. So you can see there's ages across the bottom. So if everyone needed 8 hours, everyone includes newborns, but we know newborns need more than 8 hours of sleep. So as we age, even through adulthood, from teens to older adults, our sleep need changes. It might be 8 hours for you, but it might also be 7. 7 might be your perfect amount of sleep, or it could be 10. So kind of opening up your mind to there's lots of different numbers that you could land on, and it's not permanent. As people age, the rate of insomnia goes up. Part of what's happening there, not the whole thing, but part of what's happening is people want to sleep like they did when they were 18, but they're 65 now, so they don't need as much sleep, and they catch themselves trying to sleep, which turns into insomnia. So thinking about, how much sleep do I need? Think about how do I feel during the day versus an arbitrary number. Okay. So what actually helps with sleep? I think we talked about some of the myths. but a lot of people want to know what actually helps. Just a nod to what Encompass does, what Jessica and Della do, making sure there's enough time for rest and leisure. Earlier this week, we collaborated on a presentation, and they said that the highest echelon is having time for rest. The highest outcome is that you have time for rest. Awake rest is really important for sleep. So you might have had a day like this, but if you haven't, imagine someone who is thinking from the moment she wakes up, she's checking her email, she's thinking, she's planning, she's going to appointments, traveling, not a single break or anything, any time to even think all day. And then you get in bed and it's silent and there's nothing you're supposed to be doing. That's when all the thoughts and all the stressors come right into the brain. So if there's not even a little bit of a wind down time, it's going to be very difficult to go to sleep. Not because there's something wrong with your sleep. It's just that the body knows it needs a little processing time. It needs a little downtime. So it's going to make that happen. Leah, I think, could you mute yourself if you can hear? We'll keep going. Okay. And I have this graphic here I want to highlight too, that this character isn't able to fit in video games. Not only having a moment to think to yourself, but also having fun. We have a way of making that happen, and a lot of times sleep can be the first thing to go. So there's no room for video games, or is there? And kind of moving sleep out to make room for video games. It's not a moral problem. A lot of people are really hard on themselves about it. Or feel like I should be sleeping more. I'm not doing the right thing. But really, it's just that we have a legitimate need for rest and leisure as well. Okay. So I've been talking about this throughout, but it's a really key point. What helps with sleep is allowing it to come rather than forcing it. A lot of people know this, and if you look at the graphic, you're like, oh yeah, of course you're not going to sleep if you're like, I'm determined to go to sleep. But how to stop doing that is a little bit more tricky than knowing that doing that kind of forceful action isn't helpful. So a couple things you can do. One is if you're not sleeping, this is very counterintuitive. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can meet with a qualified provider, but not being in bed, just getting out of bed and doing something else for a little bit, that really you have to let go of sleep effort or trying to sleep in order to do that. So it's a way of shifting gears. There's also an old strategy called paradoxical intention that's kind of coming back into fashion. Paradoxical intention is, I'm just going to stay awake a little bit more. Maybe you want to sleep, but your intention for a little bit is going to be just to stay awake a little bit longer. And by doing that, you're letting go of this forcing sleep or trying to make sleep happen. And if you have any questions on that, there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end as well. All right, so another thing that helps with sleep is preserving the bed only for sleep. So we can build associations between environments and internal body states. So one example of this is if you had a stressful job and you sort of picture that environment, you might feel a little stressed. You're not telling your heart to beat faster. You're not making yourself sweat, but you're just picturing that environment or going into that place where you experience a lot of stress and your body starts to react to that. So we can accidentally train the bed to be a place like that. If we spend a lot of time thinking about work or planning or eating or even being entertained, especially with stressful shows or like nail biter thrillers, we can train the body to associate the bed with an active mind or stress, so that I've had people tell me they understand the importance of winding down. They start meditating before bed and they'll tell me, I do all the things, I meditate, but then I get into bed and it's like I'm plugged into an electrical outlet. Like, what is going on there? Because I'm so relaxed before bed. And that is called conditioned arousal. You've accidentally, none of this is on purpose, You know, it's a pitfall that a lot of people fall into, but you've accidentally trained yourself to be stressed in bed. And no matter if you think it's stressful or not, your body is reacting to that. Okay. So instead, the bed can be associated with sleep and with rest. So we can have the opposite situation too. So if somebody really has a strong association between the bed and sleep, it could be an experience like, I had a stressful day. I'm feeling a little bit on edge, but I get into bed and it's like my body just relaxes, my muscles release, I feel at ease in the bed. That is what we want. And that comes from only sleeping or being very restful and relaxed in bed as a way of training the bed for that process. Okay. So another thing that I wanted to tailor to this population or to the folks that Encompass work with is knowing your chronotype. Okay, so what is chronotype? Everybody has different preferences. We talked about night owl and how being a morning person is not superior. Being a night owl is not inferior. That's referencing your chronotype or your preference. So a way to reflect and think about what is your chronotype. One way to think about it is when you take time off, like vacations or the weekends, and you can sleep whenever your body wants you to. What pattern do you naturally fall into? Because we can keep ourselves in a different sleep routine than our body wants. But I'll give you a minute to think about that. If you take some time off, maybe a truly restful vacation, not one where you're going and trying to maximize everything, but you're just resting on this vacation. What would your body naturally want you to do? I'll just give you a minute to think. And if that's a little tricky, you can think about if you were to retire early, you're not even on vacation, you can do whatever you want, whenever your body tells you to go to sleep and wake up. What time do you think that would happen? And then the second part, knowing that a night owl schedule is not negative, it's just as valid. Are there ways that you can make your life fit your natural schedule? And the answer might be no, but if you could think about, is there a way, even small ways, that you can make your life fit your natural bedtime preferences? So when we talk with the circadian rhythm researchers and the clinicians, the people at the forefront of this field, the first thing they say is, if at all possible, make your life work for your body. If you can't do that, there are things you can do with light and melatonin to shift your schedule. And you can think about it like jet lag. So if you travel somewhere, your body stays on the old sleep schedule, the old sun up, sundown times from where you were, and they stick even though you're physically in a new place. The way that chronotherapy works, which is when we're trying to change your schedule, is to sort of like jet lag, to put yourself in a state of jet lag where your body is on a different schedule than it would be otherwise. And it's definitely possible to do. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot to maintain it, but it is possible. So they generally say try to work with what you naturally have. But if that's not possible, there are strategies called chronotherapy, bright light therapy, and strategic timing of that light to get you on a different schedule. And this is something I cannot recommend in terms of like how to do it to a group of people. We need to figure out your specific schedule and do really strategic timing to get it to move. So this is something you'd have to work with a healthcare provider on who's trained in this specifically. All right, so sleep hygiene. I saw this in a question that was pre-submitted. So sleep hygiene is a great place to start, but very important, it's not enough on its own. If you already have a sleep issue, doing a lot of sleep hygiene can become almost a stressor. So for example, Sometimes people say, I've had trouble with sleeping, so I've been cutting screen time even more. I'm not even on my phone in the evening at all. I spend hours and hours winding down, and it's like it's taking away from your social life. It's making it hard to stay connected with people, and it's not working. That's really common. So a little bit of sleep hygiene is good. You can think about it like dental hygiene. So I'm not a dentist. So if you are, you can let me know if this doesn't apply. But what I understand about dental hygiene is brushing your teeth and flossing, really important, great to do. If you need a root canal, you can brush and floss and it's not going to do anything. And it's not because brushing and flossing is bad, it just needs more support. So sleep hygiene, great to do. If there's something going on, it's probably just going to irritate things. So keep that in mind. And also, it's not your fault that it's not working. I just want to make that really clear. A lot of people blame themselves, like, oh, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it hard enough. Or if they're not doing it, like, for example, phone or screen time, there's so much shame around, I'm on my screen like late and I should cut it completely. There's ways to continue using your screen in a healthy way where you're not looking at stressful things and you have the light settings really low and the blue light off. Just don't blame yourself too much. Okay, so what is sleep hygiene? We're going to talk about what's helpful. We talked about this before, about keeping your workspace separate from your sleep space. That's going to be really helpful. If you can't avoid that, like college students, kind of a classic example where your desk and your bed are in the same room a lot of the time. If you can at least separate them by, number one, not working in your bed and sticking to the desk, or if they can put up a curtain, or when you've gotten up for the day, put a sheet on top of your bed to make it like a couch if you have to sit on your bed during the day. Really trying to separate those. And there's lots of creative ways you can do that. If you have any questions, we could brainstorm that at the end. So caffeine. Caffeine's different for everybody, and it's unique for individuals with ADHD. But in general, caffeine has a pretty long half-life, 4 to 5 hours. So it can be up to 9 hours. So it's something you want to keep an eye on. If you're drinking a lot of caffeine right before bed, that might be something to explore and experiment with. Typically, we want to have caffeine in the morning if you have an overnight schedule where you're not a night owl. If you are a night owl, you can move that. So we want to keep it ideally 9 hours away from bedtime. Having at least an hour of wind down time. You could do journaling or planning, just to kind of offload that from your brain before you go to bed. So thinking back to that example before where there's someone who the minute she wakes up, she's checking email, she's doing things all day. Something that might be helpful there is planning the next day out of bed. So your brain's not automatically doing that in bed. But this could also be fun. It could be video games, it could be things like that. I want to briefly talk about screens. I mentioned it with the blue light settings. So there's two reasons why people say don't use screens at night. One is blue light. Blue light signals daytime, and sleep tends to move away from blue light. For the same reason, when we are jet lagged, we don't permanently stay jet lagged because we get sun exposure during the daytime, what is daytime there, and that moves our sleep around. So, but if you can turn the brightness way down and the blue light off, so it's kind of amber, it should look different, it should look red. That kind of eliminates that concern. You also want to think about the light around you. So you could have a screen that has the blue light completely off, but then you have like fluorescent living room lights that are extremely bright. The screen wasn't the problem. So think about your whole light environment. The other reason why people don't recommend screens at night is the content that's on the screen. Are you getting news updates? Are you seeing stressful things? Are you working? So if the content you're looking at is relaxing or fun and your screen is way down, it's sort of the equivalent of doing something else, like reading a book. It's not alarming, it's not stressful, and it's not producing blue light. So the screens themselves aren't bad. It's those two things. And a lot of times it's oversimplified just because they're trying to put out information really quickly to a lot of people, but screens are not evil. So schedule consistency. So if we're moving our schedule around a lot, that's kind of hard on the body. We're not really built for weekends. We're built for every single day is the same thing. Weekends are kind of a new concept for the body. So if you can keep it more consistent, you don't necessarily have to get up at the same time every day, but relatively roughly the same time. And that can be tricky. You can always talk with someone if you're curious about your specific situation. And then the bedroom environment, we want it to be cool, dark, and quiet. The reason why we want it to be cool is because at night the sun is down typically, and so we tend to feel more sleepy when it's cool. So having a cool bedroom environment, not so much that you're freezing, but a lot of times people will say, I wake up because I'm too hot. You may have experienced that too. That's because heat signals daytime activity. So we want to keep it cool. Dark, that's a little bit more obvious. The sun's down, it's dark. You're also not looking at things around in your room. There's less distractions when it's dark. And sometimes that can be hard for people. There can be stressors or fears. If you've had nightmares before, dark rooms can be scary. So there's definitely room for adapting and adjusting all of these. You don't have to be rigid with it. Okay. And then eating right before bed can create some issues. It can cause some reflux, and it can also give us a boost in energy, which is great. That's what food does. But right before bed, that can be, it just might delay your bedtime, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if that's what you want to do. Okay. So if you feel like you've tried everything, you don't have to stay stuck alone. I work with clients one-on-one if you're interested in that. You can also reach out if you are looking for a referral, if you need something in particular. I have a really big network of behavioral sleep medicine providers and researchers and therapists and nurses who can work with you too if you're looking for something in particular. So feel free to use me as a resource for anything related to sleep. I really welcome anybody to reach out. And I want to see if anybody has questions at this point.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That was so informative and really helpful. I have a few questions, but I want to open it up. So feel free to just unmute or put your questions in the chat. Okay. While people are considering, a question that came up for me that I know I deal with, and our population definitely deals with a lot of that overlap between neurodivergence and anxiety and imposter syndrome, and I should have done more today, I didn't do more, or whatnot. As you said, when we don't give ourselves space to think about these things during the day, maybe we're distracting or avoidant of it, or we just, don't have the bandwidth. It creates ruminating thoughts at night and almost like a compulsive tendency, which, is again associated with the anxiety and also partly with neurodivergence of just not being able. I keep going like this because like we can't let go of it. We know we should stop thinking about it. What would you recommend for people who struggle with ruminating thoughts at night when they're trying to sleep? Maybe not forcing sleep, but just saying, I want to stop the thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really common concern. So I have an activity that we could do as a little experiment, and then I'll explain why we did that and what's going on. So if you'd like to join me, I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds, and I want you to not think about a white bear. You can think about anything else, but do not think about a white bear. And if you've done this activity before, you already know how this works. So you can try it if you want to. But yeah, go ahead and I'll set the timer just for 30 seconds. Don't think about a white bear. Okay, and if you could, put in the chat, how many times did you think about a white bear? We could put it in the chat. 10 times. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, Ashley, yeah, about 4 times. Yeah. So how many times, if you could put in the chat, did you think about a white bear before I told you not to think about it? So before the 0, right? Okay. So this is an activity illustrating that when we try to not think about something, it's almost all we can think about. Similarly with sleep, when we're trying to make sleep happen, it's like sleep has disappeared. It's off the table. So when I'm talking with someone about rumination, we can do that activity. And what I want you to do is let yourself think about whatever it is you need to think about. Get out of the bed because we want to bring those sensations, thoughts, and feelings outside of the bed. We're going to train the bed so it's only for blissfully relaxing sleep and like some brief time falling asleep. It's not going to be immediately when you hit the pillow, and you may wake up briefly, but it's only for those relaxed feelings. So we're going to bring it out of the bed and let yourself think about it. You don't have to don't start checking your emails, and don't like lean into it, but let yourself think about it. Then there's a second part of the activity where you let yourself think about a white bear, and it goes down from thinking about it 10 times to thinking about it maybe 2 or 3 times, and then eventually 0 because you get bored of thinking about it. So for rumination, get out of bed for sleep. That's my whole thing, is sleep. So we're going to get out of bed, let yourself think about it. And then the second part is scheduling a time where you are going to take action on it. So that's going to be a time when your brain is more primed and ready to actually make helpful decisions. When we're ruminating about something in the middle of the night, we're more likely to make impulsive decisions or things that aren't ultimately in our best interest. So we want to schedule it at a good time for us during the day. It could also be in the evening too. If you're a night owl and your best time is like 8 p.m., that's great. You can schedule it then, but set aside a time. And if you do that over time, a trust starts to build up with yourself where, okay, I have my worry time scheduled. I know I'm going to get to it. So I don't have to think about it now because I know it'll be taken care of. The other thing I would honestly say is I'd recommend working with like the folks at Encompass or who do similar things, because getting that arranged where you do have that system in place where you can work on those things during the day can be really helpful too. So I would honestly recommend that
Yeah.
as well. Was there
Because
another part to the question? I want to make sure I captured it.
I was going to say really quickly though, I was smiling because Katrina mentioned we did a collaboration on Tuesday and it was centered around resting without guilt. And a central part of what we were recommending aligns with this, which is using strong executive functioning skills to cultivate rest. And we could get into that,
Mm-hmm.
but I love the symbiosis there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I did ask, how long do you stay out of bed with ruminating thoughts? You'd said set a time. What do you recommend?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this really depends on the person. So if this is someone who has insomnia, I would, whether it's me or somebody else, I would recommend meeting with someone so we can look at how much are you actually sleeping. So let's say, for example, somebody's sleeping, I'm just going to throw out a number, 6.5 hours. They're feeling okay during the day, but they're spending 8 hours in bed and like trying to get 8 hours. So in that case, I would recommend only being in bed 7 hours. So if you're ruminating, let's say at like 10 o'clock at night, we've already set a bedtime that's close to what your body actually is letting you sleep. So you might be out of bed for an hour. On the other hand, if the rumination kind of dies down and you get back in bed, if you're able to let go and go to sleep, it could only be like 15 minutes out of bed. It really depends on the person. Looking more so at what's going on in the mind and the body versus a set amount of time out of bed. And feel free to ask any follow-up questions to that too.
Well, Kathleen asked, how much do you find sleep trackers like Fitbit, etc., to be helpful in understanding your child's sleep patterns?
That's a really great question, Kathleen. So there's a lot of interest in the trackers, wearables, and consumer products for sleep among the sleep research community. Genuinely, the sleep researchers want to work with consumer wearables because they're producing really interesting things. So a more simple way of putting that is the researchers want to know, what are you measuring? How do you know the person's asleep or not, or what stage they're in? Because none of the wearables use the electrodes on the brain. None of them are using polysomnography, which is the gold standard of measuring sleep. They're using, usually it's heart rate, they're measuring maybe temperature, maybe pulse ox levels, and then making a guess about whether the person is asleep or awake or what's going on there. And they keep these in a black box algorithm that the researchers can't see. They've studied it anyway because we can study things that we can't see, but then there's a system update. And so they don't know if it's still accurate or not. So at this point, kind of the consensus on consumer wearables is like, please work with sleep researchers. We want to work together so that we can see if what you're tracking is actually what's happening. So are they helpful or not? I mean, I think it depends, and we don't know. So that's kind of the tricky one there. But hopefully in the future, there's more collaboration between the two, because I think it has great potential to really be powerful. The other thing I'd say is the wearables, their output on what is good sleep and what is not good sleep is also based on population data. So everybody put together in one big pool. It's not customized to your child, maybe your child's medical history or what's been happening. So it may be worth, if you have a concern, it may be worth talking with a pediatrician. If you don't have a concern, sometimes tracking sleep a lot can create anxiety when it's really just doing what it needs to do. I hope that's helpful.
Can I ask a
There's no,
question about active rest? Sorry, this is Ashley.
yeah.
Yeah, I was curious, how do you help folks sort of strategize around how to fit that in? Like I work with I mean, I'm ADHD myself, and I have a lot of clients that are like super busy and they're parents and they're in school and they have like crazy busy schedules, and there's oftentimes a lot of shoulds, and I do this myself. I totally do the revenge sleep time procrastination thing. Like I, it's like sleep is like an intrusion on my special interest time and stuff like that. But I yeah, just curious if there's strategies that you find that help motivate folks to prioritize active rest, and also like how you might help somebody even discover what active rest is like for them. So I think there's a lot of shoulds around rest, that needs to be like we're meditating or doing something relaxing. It might be understimulating for somebody who's ADHD or ADHD. So yeah, any thoughts would be great, because I thought that was a really good point.
Yeah, Ashley, you speak. Oh, go
No,
ahead.
please. No. Yeah.
I'm going to tag Jessica and Della in a second, but I just want to highlight something where you said that what a lot of people expect, or the shoulds, like meditating or understimulating. One thing that I really make it a point to do is we can open up our minds about what rest looks like. There's so much, I see so much demonization of screen time, especially late night screen time, but that can be exactly what some of my clients need to get that active rest and to feel like sleep isn't this total intrusion. The other thing from a sleep perspective, and I am going to tap Jessica and Della in because the daytime stuff is really more their zone of genius. But at night, one thing that happens a lot of the time is there's ill-timed sleep. So we're really told to work against our own chronotype or our own preference. So it's almost like trying to go to sleep several hours before it's actually preferred by your body. So it's even harder and more frustrating. So I would be looking at the chronotype as a way of working with your body, if at all possible. The other thing I'd be looking at from a sleep perspective is how much time is spent in bed and how can we adjust that. A lot of times when people work with me, they're surprised that they have more time in their day because we increase the quality of sleep first, then quantity. So a lot of times they're spending less time on sleep, but getting better quality sleep. Like they're feeling better during the day and spending less time doing it. I can talk more about that too, but I want to make sure I highlight Jessica and Della, their presentation on earlier this week was incredible about how to prioritize rest and how to get everything done.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and actually, if you ever wanted to have a more, private conversation, but generally speaking, I think you made a really great point about the shoulds and this idea of enough being extremely vague and abstract and subjective and often quite comparative. And so when we, for all of us, but especially wonderful ADHD brain, that vagueness and subjectivity is going to spike anxiety, and anxiety shuts us down. We're going to avoid even wanting to think about it because it can feel overwhelming and shaming. So what we want to do is bring in our executive functioning strategies, and just kind of a bird's eye view would be to work the skills that we teach at Encompass. So we would start, and I go like this because I'm already laying out my buffet of tasks that we could do. What are the types of things I fantasize about being able to do before bed or during the day without planning or organizing around them? Can I just get task awareness? We would then work on associating values with those activities. And some of those could be practical values, like how long do I want to spend? How much money do they cost? Does it depend on other people? Am I affecting the other people in my orbit? Often they're emotional values, though. Do I feel like I need to, but don't want to? Do I like it? Am I not interested? And all of that value recognition allows us to move to our third skill, which is to define enough, to get specific. And do we want to think enough in terms of time? If I could play 30 minutes of video games, that would feel like enough. Do we want it to be in terms of task? If I could, I don't play video games, so get 2 levels ahead, if I could read for 30 minutes or read one chapter a night, and we can get really granular with defining enough, which moves us to our fourth skill, which embeds the when I do it and where I do it. And taking into account what Catherine said about keeping the bed a sacred space, maybe we really take that to heart and consider our environments where we actively rest and recognize that context switching and time blindness and hyperfixation are going to play a role. So, we want to individually support people, but generally we would think of tools and strategies to anticipate these common issues and then to work in time management strategies to afford this very clearly defined notion of what would be enough for me. So it was kind of a lot, but that's really using our EF skills to get into this strategic notion of very specific rest. And feel free to follow up as well. But yeah. But I'll just say again, I think, Catherine, you've mentioned a lot in this presentation around kind of the I shouldn't be on screens, or I should be able to fall asleep, or I shouldn't get up in the middle of the night. And shoulds are, as far as executive functioning goes, kind of the death of our functioning, because behind a should is self-doubt, is shame, is comparison. And we really want to keep those feelings at bay because, of course, they're awful, but they will also make us avoid and turn away from even considering what's causing the shame. I think someone put a question in. Oh,
I have oh, sorry, go ahead. Are you going to read one, Jess? Okay.
no.
I just have a question for Catherine, thinking about a couple of the clients who I support who I think have, because of ADHD diagnoses and other diagnoses, have this relationship with medication that impacts their sleep. And so while we're helping them organize their time, get structure around, building that trust with themselves, which you referenced, Catherine, and Jessica is pulling in here, we really, I think the core of our aim in our work is to get tools and supports in people's lives to build up that trust with themselves that hopefully reduces that anxiety, right? And every so often with changes in medication and environmental shifts that go beyond, in some ways, the ways that we're managing our time, we can see big disruptions in sleep that impact our clients. Knowing that oftentimes it's the case that we're just going to have to kind of ride this wave for a couple of weeks for this to even out, and yet it still impacts them quite severely. I wonder, have you worked with clients in those spaces, and what are ways that we can help kind of build in deeper rest, even in the midst of that transition?
Yeah, that's such a great question. You're hitting on a couple of points that I want to highlight. So there's an emerging understanding. You would think that with sleep, we already know everything there is to know because we've been doing it for all of time, but we're really learning more about it. It's kind of like the deep sea. It's always been there, but we haven't really looked closely at it until recently. So one of the things that's emerging is that good sleep is responsive sleep. So how much sleep you need is going to change over your lifespan. It's going to vary person to person, and it's going to vary with things like medication changes, with life stressors, with any number of things that influence sleep. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong necessarily. It's that your body is responding to support you. So let's say you're starting on a new medication, maybe a stimulant, and you need a little bit more awake time for a while to process that, to get used to that. So what I mean by responsive is, instead of sticking to or shooting yourself and wishing that you could have this mythical 8 hours and you're like feeling bad about nap, but your body's not doing it, look at what your body's actually doing and then set a schedule that's pretty close to that for now. It doesn't have to be forever. So maybe for a couple of weeks, you're getting into bed later than you would have normally, and you're getting up at your usual time. So there's a smaller window, but it's responsive to what your body is letting you do for that time. One thread I want to pull out that you mentioned, Della, is deeper rest during the day too. So, it is disruptive. You may not feel on your A game when this is happening. So you're adjusting your sleep schedule to match what your body's doing. That's going to help in a lot of ways. What we found is that not struggling to sleep or not trying to push sleep actually helps us get better, more quality sleep when we do sleep. So it's not this stagnant thing that it's the same every time. We can get really good. A lot of us know this intuitively. You can get good deep rest, or you could be asleep a long time but not feel rested. So essentially maximizing that time that you are asleep by adjusting your sleep schedule. And then also things you can do during the day. So if you're in a place where awake rest feels like something you know how to do, you know what you like to do, you have a little bit more extra time now because you've reduced that window, you can do some of that so that you're still getting some restorative time physically. Another thing you can do is bright light when you're feeling low energy. So there are exceptions to this. If you have, seizures, or if there's bipolar, you may want to talk to your doctor. There are some reasons why you wouldn't want to do this. Most people, though, bright light can bring on energy. It can help. It can stimulate the circadian rhythm and help things get back on track. Making sure, kind of going back to the basics, making sure you're getting enough hydration, nutrition, things like that. A lot of times when we're worried about sleep, we put all this energy into it, but there's a lot of things that help with our energy levels during the day and with our health in general. So quick summary, responsive sleep. So if you're not sleeping, just reduce your window for a while and do some other things that might be helpful during the day to support you in the meantime, knowing that it's not permanent and that you can get deeper, more quality rest when you are sleeping, even if you're not sleeping as long.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kathleen asked, what's your advice?
Naps.
Naps. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, naps. Who doesn't love a good nap? They can be disorienting though when they're really long. You may have experienced that when you nap and then you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm a zombie and I feel awful. If someone doesn't have a sleep disorder, do what feels good. Nap if you love it. Go ahead and do it. Shorter naps tend not to be as disorienting. What's happening there is when we're asleep, our bodies produce all kinds of neurochemicals that keep most people from acting out dreams. So, in the example of sleepwalking, sleep talking, that's not happening. And that, by the way, isn't necessarily even a bad thing. It can cause social disruptions, but it's not inherently bad. But when we release all those chemicals during a nap, it can be uncomfortable. So shorter naps can tend to be more pleasant. If you do have trouble with sleep, it's going to be extremely tempting to nap and nap a lot. But what can happen then is we get even more confused. Our bodies get more confused. So when you take a nap, it's sort of deducting it from that night because we don't need more and more and more sleep. So it'll pull it from that night. You may have a little bit more trouble sleeping that night. And if you have sleep problems in general, that can kind of exacerbate things. So it depends. I think that's probably the answer. Yeah. Feel free to ask any follow-up questions on naps if you have any particular concerns. The other thing I'll say on naps too, I assume because of where we are culturally, most people don't have a everyday regular scheduled nap. So that can be perfectly healthy and normal. There's other places in the world where a routine nap in the middle of the day is perfectly normal. It makes sense for the climate. It's too hot to do anything. If you're doing the same thing every day and it works for you, that's great. Occasional naps pulls away from that sleep hygiene principle of schedule consistency. If there's no other questions, go ahead, Della.
I just had one more. This is a previous conversation that we had I think months ago now, when we first met, and you said something that has kind of stuck with me, and I wonder if you could expand on it a little bit. But you had said that we often, like, as you're working with your clients, you're often helping them understand how much they are actually resting and sleeping, and that oftentimes through that process we learn that we're sleeping more than we think that we are. And I wonder if you could kind of speak to that psychologically as we think about ourselves as sleepers and rested people.
Yeah, excellent question. So if you've experienced this, if you can picture maybe an elderly family member who is sitting on the couch and it's very clear that they're sleeping, that maybe they're snoring, their eyes are closed, to us, it's clear they're sleeping. But if you wake them up, they'll say, I wasn't sleeping, or I was watching that. We are not very good at telling when we are in a light stage of sleep. We're pretty good at knowing if we're in a deep state of sleep, but we're not that good at telling if we're in N1 sleep. So the letter N, number 1 sleep, is the lightest stage of sleep, and we can't really tell. So there's something called paradoxical insomnia where someone is sleeping, but they just are, it can come from being stressed or being very worried about sleep even, where we stay in that light stage for a long time and just don't know we're asleep. So with that, a lot of times people are getting more sleep than they think they are, especially when they have insomnia, because they're in that light state, but they're not perceiving it as sleep. So, I think this also, like most of the things, depends really on the person. There are people who are genuinely not sleeping and they're not getting any more sleep than they think they are. So this isn't true for every single person, but a lot of times we are more asleep than we think.
One thing that came up for me while you were talking, just thinking about kind of the intersection of our work, is that a lot of the clients we support really struggle with transition and glitch between moving, like I'm seeing some head bobbing, moving from the TV room into the bedroom, going to the bathroom, brushing teeth. It's a lot of little steps that can feel really overwhelming and invoke some decision fatigue. Like, should I brush my teeth first or take my medication? Or wait, should I set coffee? And Netflix says one more episode is starting. Okay, I'll just watch one more episode. And so one thing that you inspired me to think of just now that we work on with our clients is creating a manageable routine for going to bed. A lot of times when people start putting these routines together, they put 20 steps. And it's like, I'm going to do this and this and this and read and meditate and da 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 da. And just coming up with, again, laying out the things we want to do and prioritizing them and using our ES skills to reduce some of that decision fatigue that's going to stop us from transitioning. And then using timers that are not on your phone. A lot of people set phone timers to go to bed, and we will just ignore that immediately. And so you're just kind of getting my wheels turning about EF strategies that would support your strategies of getting healthier sleep and having a healthier relationship to sleep.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of bells and whistles with the wind down routine, but really consistency is so much more impactful than having like a 15 million step skincare wind down with all the things. um, Sometimes reporters reach out and they're like, what bedtime thing gadget do you recommend? Nothing. Yeah, you don't need much, but doing it consistently creates this association too. So I talked about the association between the bed and sleep, but if you have a really consistent routine, it becomes a habit, and that can also signal to your body that it's time for our sleep habit. So it can naturally start producing the neurochemicals and bodily processes and prepare for sleep if there's a really strong association between the bedtime routine even and sleep. And it doesn't have to, if, in fact, it's better if it doesn't involve a lot of fun little gadgets and tools and bells and whistles and complicated wind down things. Yeah.
Awesome.
You also mentioned about transition too. So something that came up at, I think it was at the end of the talk we had earlier this week that I was thinking about is that shift in location. So I talk a lot about the bed being only for sleep, and that is important. And there's definitely room for flexibility there. So if, teeth are brushed, pajamas on, everything's kind of taken care of, and then shifting to something really pleasant, it could be in maybe a really cozy chair next to the bed. And that's part of the wind down routine. So then the only shift that needs to happen is, 1-2 steps and then get under the covers. Or even in some cases, if there's not a sleep disorder. So I would say if you do have trouble sleeping, I'd be really cautious with this, or talk to a behavioral sleep medicine provider. But you can do cozy things in bed too, briefly. Just make sure it's not like, watching horror films or page turner books and things that you don't want to associate with the bed, even though it's pleasant, that thrill sensation. We don't want to pair that with the bed because the thrill will become anxiety and stress pretty quickly. Yeah. We have a few minutes. I want to make sure one feedback I get a lot from these talks that's like the most helpful, people often tell me, is not shaming sleep schedules and how to actually change those blue light settings so you don't have to feel shame and really bad about the screen time. So talk to, if you're working with someone and they tell you not to use a screen, I'm not overriding that. But in the settings, there's night shift, blue light blocker, eye comfort mode. You can go into your settings and set a timer so it automatically happens, which can also be a cue or a reminder. So all my screens, when the sun goes down, turn red, like red. So you can search your particular phone, but on the iPhone, it's night shift in the settings. And I've heard good feedback. So I want to make sure I say that for everybody here today. Hopefully, my goal is that this was helpful for everybody.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Thank you to everyone who attended. We're so grateful for you to be here. You'll get a follow-up email that will give you access to Katherine's information and our information. So please reach out if you have questions or want to talk about this further. But thank you again so much. This was so wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And thank you all for attending and helping people learn accurate information about sleep and busting some unnecessarily shameful myths about sleep. So thank you all for that too.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Happy
Bye.
Friday, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.